Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling like you lost, even though you said everything you wanted to say? That knot in your throat, that heaviness in your chest, as if every word only pushed you further from your own strength. Maybe you're surrounded by people who talk over you, people who interrupt, mock, and dominate, people who mistake arrogance for confidence. And maybe deep down, you've been taught to believe that staying silent is weakness. That not defending yourself is surrender, that if you don't react, you've already lost. What if I told you, however, that this is all a lie? True power has never been found in words. But what about when they are absent? One of the most misunderstood intellectuals in history, Nietzsche, observed something that few people dare to acknowledge. People who talk too much reveal too much. Those who have to convince are already in a vulnerable position. The world teaches us that we must fight, explain ourselves, and defend our beliefs, as if every interaction were a battle for truth. But Nietzsche suggests something different, a more subtle, lethal, and incomparably more intellectual approach. Silence, in his opinion, is an overwhelming presence rather than only the lack of sound. Silence is scary. It destabilizes. The other person is forced to face themselves. If you're someone who feels overlooked, overshadowed, or invalidated all the time, this video is for you. For those of you who end talks feeling as though your words were not fully understood. For those of you who are fed up with being the easy target, the kind one, and the one who attempts to maintain harmony while others exploit your composure. Maybe you've mistaken your silence for submission. Today, however, I will demonstrate to you that your greatest weapon may be quiet, and that being able to avoid having to engage in a debate is a greater victory than winning one. Get ready to see silence in a new light, not as an absence of response, but as the definitive response. Let's explore Nietzsche's theories and learn how to control any circumstance without speaking a word. Why do we feel the need to answer, to refute, to correct, and to prove our rightness? We have been indoctrinated to believe that the truth must be defended at all costs, that we are giving others the advantage if we say nothing. However, Nietzsche understood this as a manifestation of our innermost weakness, the dread of appearing weak. And beneath this dread comes the ego, a frail ego that cannot tolerate being questioned, that conflates criticism with assault, and that transforms any discussion into a battleground. According to Nietzsche, most individuals debate for power rather than the truth. They want to reconfirm their convictions, not because they are robust, but because if they are shaken, everything crumbles. In this way, argumentation serves as defensive armor rather than as an instrument of wisdom, a desperate cry from the ego to maintain control of the narrative. What does this signify then? That you have already entered their game and lost when you feel pressured to defend yourself or prove your case. Because just justifying your viewpoint demonstrates that you are still trapped in the want to be accepted, acknowledged, and understood. This is what Nietzsche referred to as herd morality, the conduct of those who live according to social norms and aspire to be viewed as morally upright, just, and good. But this desire for approval is precisely what keeps you weak. True strength, according to Nietzsche, is not in convincing others, but in not having to do so. It is about maintaining your vision in the face of ridicule, criticism, and rejection. It is being misunderstood while remaining unshaken. What he suggests is a form of power that is measured in internal mastery rather than verbal victories. Power derived from the ability to remain calm while everyone else is losing control, a power that increases when you stop reacting. If you truly want to win, you must recognize that the game of discussion is a theater, and the first person to rise up and act has already lost. Nietzsche understood that the reacting mind is a subservient mind. The observant mind is the hazardous one, because it transcends the need to prove anything. But if we don't react, how can we exert control over others? If words betray us, how can we make others feel our strength without speaking a single word? Nietzsche's response rests in the concept of the Übermensch, who transcends moral boundaries and rules the universe via self-control. In the next section, we will look at this figure and how it represents the strategic use of quiet as a weapon of dominance. Are you prepared for this level? Because from now on, silence starts to speak. If this content makes sense to you, please subscribe and support the channel. Thank you. Nietzsche didn't write for the weak. He wrote for the few who have the courage to go within, confront their own suffering, and turn it into strength. For him, ordinary people are caught by customs, moralism, and the desire for others' approval. But there is another form of being, uncommon, dangerous, and free. The Übermensch, or overman, does not live in reaction to the world. He molds the world in his own image. And the most impressive part? He usually does this in utter silence. The Übermensch doesn't have to win debates. He does not play cheap emotional games. He observes, he understands. He carefully considers when to talk, and more significantly, when to keep silent. He recognizes that silence is a type of communication, which others may overlook. A language that does not seek to persuade, it establishes presence. The Übermensch's stillness is not empty, rather, it is threatening. It represents authority. It's the sound of self-mastery. While others shout, he demands attention with his stare. While others explain, he observes and discloses others' flaws through his calm. His serene is a barricade. Those on the other side are in despair, trying to figure out what's going on. And in their misery, they make blunders. They expose too much. They lose their balance. This silence does not imply passivity. It is complete control over one's own energies. It is a strategic economy. The Übermensch understands that every spoken word is a disclosed move. Every emotional reaction exposes a weak area. That is why he remains silent. Not because he has nothing to say, but because he does not need to speak. He has overcome the compulsion to prove something to others. His presence speaks for itself. More importantly, it disturbs, because his quiet compels others to look within, to cope with their own loudness. In a noisy society, those who can master stillness are rulers. Nietzsche defined the Übermensch as someone who establishes his own values, standards, and morality. He doesn't rely on anyone's approval, and this is why he is feared, because nothing is more destabilizing than a person who cannot be controlled by guilt, fear, or the desire for acceptance. His silence serves as a protective barrier against all of these methods, and when he talks, it is because his words will bring down an empire. But this raises an essential question. What makes silence so unsettling for others? Why do so many individuals feel threatened when others choose not to react? What happens within the human mind when the expected confrontation is replaced by an overwhelming absence? The answer lies in psychology, and that is exactly what we will explore in the next part. Because we must first comprehend the confusion silence causes in other people's thoughts in order to appreciate its power. And believe me, it is far deeper than it appears. Being silent is more than just not making noise. It is a mirror, and for many people, what it reflects is intolerable. If you don't respond, you're not simply keeping yourself quiet. You're making the other person hear their own voice and face, their own arguments without the support of others. That destabilizes, because the majority of individuals speak to protect themselves, to persuade themselves, and to conceal the gap between their words and their true selves, rather than to express themselves. Their masquerade is removed when you don't speak. Silence is interpreted as judgment in hostile situations, as social psychology has already demonstrated. Even if you are only listening, the speaker starts to feel insecure and uneasy. Why? Because they lose control of the story without your reaction and response. An alert state is triggered in the human brain. The area of dread and anxiety, the amygdala, comes into play. Is he criticizing me? The other person begins to reflect their own worries onto you. Did he see how insecure I was? Is he aware of my bluff? Silence is like an unseen razor on this psychological battlefield. No one can see it, but everyone can sense it. Nietzsche had this feeling long before contemporary psychology verified it. According to him, the typical individual is a slave to their responses. They speak out of fear of being forgotten, behave impulsively, and respond out of vanity. Because they are aware that every word they say is a gift to the enemy, the greater spirit, the one who masters themselves, remains silent. Every emotional response is an uncontrollable cry that indicates the target of an attack. Furthermore, manipulators suffer greatly when they remain silent. Reactions are necessary for those who live on controlling other people's emotions to continue in the game. The manipulator panics when you break the pattern by remaining silent. They require your answer in order to support their own claims. They lose themselves without it. They show themselves. They reveal the weakness they have been trying so hard to conceal. But there's more to it than that. Unresolved pains are also triggered by silence. It triggers humiliation, rejection, and abandonment traumas. Because all of a sudden, the other person understands that they are not in the center, that their presence has no effect, and that their words are insufficient. And the narcissistic ego cannot tolerate this. Therefore, by keeping quiet, you are not only protecting yourself, but also striking at the core of the illusion, where it hurts the most. Silence is therefore a sign of power. It goes against all that has been taught, which makes it uncomfortable for you as well as for other people. Against the urge to respond, to defend, to explain itself, but it is potent precisely because it requires mastery. And real power is mastery. Now that you understand how silence works in the other person's mind, how it unveils postures, triggers vulnerabilities, and dismantles defenses, it's time to go further. To become someone who strategically and purposefully employs this strength rather than only being an observer. In the next section, you will learn exactly how to turn silence into a weapon of consciousness, how to win any debate without uttering a single word. And once you master this, you will no longer be subject to control. The moment has arrived to begin utilizing silence instead of just comprehending its power, because knowledge is only dead theory without application. From this point on, you will discover how to turn your silence into a precise weapon. Not a protective barrier, but a razor-sharp blade that can pierce people's masks when they least expect it. The first stage is straightforward but cruel. Keep quiet when your will demands an answer. Your entire being will want to react. Thus, this calls for strength. It will want to defend itself. It will seek to demonstrate its correctness. That desire, however, is poison. Every time you give in, you show that other people still have power over you, that their opinions are still important to you, that you're still playing with them. True stillness emerges only after you eliminate that need, when you realize you owe nothing to anyone. The truth does not have to be expressed in order to exist. Observation is the second weapon of silence. You listen while others speak, lose themselves in explanations, and attempt to fill the silence with words. However, you listen as a hunter would listen to the sound of prey's footsteps in the forest, not as someone waiting for their turn to speak. You see the vulnerabilities cloaked in conceit, the subtle contradictions, and the secret fears, and you keep all of this. Because it will be surgical if you speak at all. It will be done with the accuracy of someone who is an expert in the other person's emotional domain. Time is the third weapon. Learn to be silent. Tension is power, and the pause is a component of tension. The other person has an internal breakdown while they talk and wait for your response, which never materializes. The discomfort increases. Their assumptions, anxieties, and paranoia start to fill the emptiness in their minds. 10 well-crafted remarks won't have the same effect as a simple glance from you in silence. The fourth tool is unpredictability. You become unpredictable once you grasp quiet. Additionally, people are always afraid of the unpredictable since they are unsure of what they can expect from you. They also lose the advantage when they are unsure of what to expect. They start to be cautious. They begin to measure each word. You invert the interaction's logic. You go from being reactive to the conversation's gravitational core. Silence at this moment is absolute dominance, not absence, but be cautious. Do not equate silence with inactivity. Weakness was never encouraged by nature. Here we are discussing an active, tense, and purposefully heated quiet. You're not withholding. You are positioning yourself, making decisions, and preparing yourself with a strength that can be felt without having to be seen. Additionally, you can speak a single sentence when the time is appropriate, when silence has already said what it needs to say. An exact remark. Something that closes the conversation, not because it was louder, but because it was more genuine, profound, and indisputable. However, this leads us to a more sensitive matter, because we have discussed how to win by being silent up to this point. But there are moments in which winning isn't the only goal of the game. It's about surviving on an emotional level. In some circumstances, people are not only engaging in debate, rather they are taking advantage of, controlling, and draining you. Every day you unknowingly surrender your control. Without uttering a single word, you are being controlled. This is where the journey's darkest moment occurs. When a person who has lost control of their own life starts to scream silently, instead of using silence as a tactic. In the following section, we will reveal this reality and demonstrate how you could be exploited without you realizing it, because someone can be using your silence to establish an empire while you believe you are avoiding confrontations. Is there anything more twisted than being silenced? Nature already knows. It is being trained to believe that the only way to proceed is to remain silent. That being mature means putting aside your anger, giving in during conversations, and avoiding confrontation at all costs. That silence is a sign of balance. What if I warned you, though, that this might be a trap? In many cases, this kind of quiet is actually disguised submission rather than wisdom. This was brutally clear to Nietzsche. What you call tranquility is frequently a domesticated surrender. Have you noticed how some people take advantage of your calmness? You allow them to push their ideas, impose their wills, and occupy areas that were yours, despite your abilities to listen, ignore, and avoid conflict. You persuade yourself that it's not worth arguing, that harmony is preferable, and that it's not a huge deal. In actuality, though, this deceptive tranquility comes at a very high cost. What's the worst? Those who know that you will never react are using you. Nietzsche talked about the morality of slaves, which is a set of values created by the weak to live in a world where the strong rule. It is the morality of resignation, guilt, and being nice, an unseen code that teaches you to negate yourself, shrink yourself, and comply while yet feeling virtuous about it. However, Nietzsche didn't write for self-resigning people. He wrote for individuals who have the courage to break free from these bonds, for those who choose to stop taking part in their own surrender after realizing they are being used. You are unknowingly giving up your authority when you accept this kind of silence, the one that covers you from within. The expectations of other people are shaping you. You are no longer yourself. You are who others require you to be. Furthermore, this is the antithesis of what Nietzsche referred to as the will to power, because shouting is not the actual will to power. It's not to control other people. It's to control oneself. It's to take back command of your own story. It is to remain silent because you owe no one anything, not because you are afraid. This submissive silence must end, and the silence of presence must emerge in its place, the one without bending. That is not degrading. That's not an apology for being here. The person who takes a stand in the middle of chaos and, without uttering a word, changes the course of circumstances. This is the silence that Nietzsche would respect, the tranquility of an individual who has controlled themselves. However, how can one get to this point? How can you become the master of your own presence instead of being controlled? How do you eradicate your innate herd morality and reincarnate as an authoritative person even while you remain silent? The Übermensch, the most potent character in Nietzsche's philosophy, holds the key to the solution. We've already discussed him. It's time to learn how to become one now. You will learn what it takes to be this new kind of human being in the next and last chapter. Because there is no need for more talkers in the world. It needs those who can master quiet and rule with it. Absence is not silence. It is not emptiness. It is not a space between sentences. Pure presence is true silence. It's mastery. It is an indication that you are influencing the world with your own presence rather than just responding to it. Nietzsche's writings are never intended for people who are happy to live. His writing was intended for those who aspire to transcend, for people who are prepared to remove the masks that society has placed on them. No matter how painful that may be, neither the coward nor the downtrodden would remain silent in the presence of the Übermensch. Even before the fight starts, the warrior who has already prevailed is silent. It is the silence of someone who knows who he is and doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. More significantly, he is aware of his own worth. Now consider your life. How many times have you kept quiet out of shame, fear, or a desire to avoid disturbing others? How many times have you let someone else to make decisions for you, speak for you, or ignore your own truth? Enough. This method of living is an insult to existence itself, according to Nietzsche. Perhaps you are betraying yourself by putting up with this kind of silence. From today on, your silence needs to change its tone. It must become an unseen scream of authority rather than an escape, a boundary, an affirmation of your identity, even if no one can understand. Because you don't need to be understood for who you are. It must be experienced. That takes guts. Do you possess that courage? Then comment below. I choose the silence that commands respect. You need to publicly acknowledge this decision, this commitment to yourself, not just so I know you've come this far. Because even when they talk about silence, words have power. But don't stop here. The next video is essential. It will take everything you've learned and drive it deeper. Not for me, but because you deserve to go beyond. And remember, the weak shout. The strong remain silent. The wise choose when.